It's the Forensic Lunch! My name is Dave.
And I'm Matthew.
And with us this week, in order of appearance, Ben LeMere. Hello, Ben.
Hello.
Lee Woodfield. And Robin. Robin, how do you say your last name?
Keir.
Keir. Okay,
Robin Keir. Yep. Scottish originally.
Oh, that's good. Just...
No one's perfect.
This is going to be our first show with two people from the United Kingdom on in the same episode. So.
No, I'm from Texas. What are you talking about?
Well, I was born and raised in Wales, actually, but the name is Scottish, so I'm all over. And I live in America.
It's going to be a good episode.
Do we need subtitles? Just.
So, if you didn't read the description for this week's show, we actually have a pretty spectacular lineup of interesting people. Barry hasn't been able to join us yet, but hopefully he'll make it on and we'll squeeze him in. But he was going to talk about how to do digital forensics research and development with a developer operations mindset and how to take and apply those things. However, the two gentlemen and Mr. Whitfield who have joined us this week have fascinating topics, in my opinion. I'm very happy they're able to join us. Ben LeMere is going to be talking to us all about vehicle forensics, which is something I don't think most people even really thought of before. When you learn about it and what's in there and what you can get out, it really is amazing, and it really opens your mind to just how many other types of devices we're going to be talking about like this in the future as more and more embedded systems keep information and sync information and store information. We're always talking about the Internet of Things, but really, I mean, the truth of the matter is that if it's an embedded system that retains data, someone's going to do forensics on it at some point in time. And our field, instead of getting narrower, just keeps getting wider. And there's just going to be so many ways and forms of specialization until it all just moves into the cloud, and then we'll all just be cloud people. And then Lee Whitfield, of course, is with us this week to talk about the current topics, interesting things in the news, followed by Mr. Keir, who is going to talk all about Superfetch and his work in getting Superfetch brought into CrowdStrike's crowd response tool, which I think is very cool because there wasn't really a whole lot of people exposing the Superfetch data before. So, all that being said, I can see the view count going up. All of you are hopping on. For those of you watching recorded, you're going to be finding links to everything that we're going to talk about right below. And we do this every 2 weeks. If this is the first time you've watched, it's time to get straight into the good stuff and go to Ben LeMere, who has, as we've discussed, the best background of any guest on the Forensic Lunch. Hello, Ben.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Ben, let's start with the basics for people who don't know who you are. Who are you? Where do you work? And what do you do?
So my name is Ben LeMere, and I work for a company called Berla Corporation. And right now we basically concentrate a lot on vehicle forensics and looking at the different pieces and parts to the car with a digital forensics kind of shade to it. User data. What kind of user data is left in the car? How do we get it out? And whatnot.
And you don't also just do Berla. A lot of people know you from another product that you have.
Right. We also have another product called Blackthorn. And in fact, I was sharing with you guys before. We're headed out tomorrow to Australia. Actually today, but I'm already in the tomorrow mindset because it's Australia. We're headed out there this afternoon, and we're going to do a whole training session down there for on Blackthorn for customs and border protection.
Very cool. It's funny. I've actually watched you get introduced to people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, have you heard about this other company?" And you're like, "Actually, yeah, that's our stuff too." So make sure that people are aware. It's all you.
Yep.
You do a lot of things when it regards to navigation in cars. How did you get started in doing this? This is a pretty specialized niche.
It is. We like to try to find things that really no one else is doing yet, and kind of look at what the problems are going to be a couple years down the road. Try to take a proactive approach instead of reactive. And we were doing GPS forensics back in about 2006, back when that was cool, and it kind of really just metamorphosed into. People kept asking us, well, I have this car, but it doesn't have a GPS device in it, like a Garmin or a TomTom. I want to get something out of the car. And so about 2012, we started looking at the vehicles and just kind of slowly working our way into it over the last couple of years.
Very cool. Now, a lot of people, I don't think, really understand why something would be stored in a vehicle. And I've heard you talk about before, so I'm aware of it. But why would you, if you were to sit down and tell someone why they would care about what was stored in the car, explain how the data gets there, not only from the car itself, but from the other devices.
Sure. I mean, first I'd generally ask people, have they ever had a case that involved a car? Has their suspect driven a car? Have they been tied to a car, or was the body in the car? And generally, the answer is always, well, yeah, of course. And it really comes down to, wouldn't it be nice to know where that car had been, who was in that car, and what kind of things that car had been exposed to. So, we do a lot with the user data. To us, that means, what does the driver or passenger bring into the car with them? Their phone, their hard drive, their thumb drive. They plug those into the vehicle, and when they do that, it leaves a lot of information on the vehicle about the devices that they plugged in. You take that and you couple that with the onboard systems in the car and what it's recording, and then you take that coupled with the navigation feature that most of these cars have, and you really start to build the who, what, when. We can't tell you why, but we can tell you at least some of those things.
It's really interesting when you think about it. And I don't think, and this is something you talked about before, people realize that when they sync a device to a car, just how much data goes over.
Right. I'll give you a good example. So we're very close to BWI Airport, so we rent cars quite frequently. And we had a Ford Explorer one time. We rented it, we pulled the system out, and we recovered 70 phones that had been connected to it, all of their call logs, their contacts, and their SMS history, as well as their music preferences, songs that were on their device, and some of their Facebook and Twitter things as well. So, I mean, that's 70. The car claims it'll hold 5. You're carving from unallocated space. And it's quite comical when you sit back and read some of the text messages.
So I think there's 2 lessons you learn here. One is never sync your phone to a rental car.
Absolutely. Well, please do. I mean, if you're going to commit a crime, please connect your phone to the car.
And 2, it's time to rethink how we approach this, because I can see this from 2 angles in cases that we work. For some reason, recently we've gotten more than one case involved mobile forensics on cell phones that were involved in large accidents, and so there was suddenly an interest in the large-scale civil litigation side as far as for damages and possible death and all the rest of that kind of bad stuff. But they want to know what they're doing with their phones, and I think to the same extent knowing what was going on with the car is one thing. But the other thing that I see a lot in civil cases, because I don't do criminal, and our viewers are a mix of both civil and criminal. Criminal, I think it's pretty easy to see the implications of it.
Sure.
On the civil side, let's say you have someone who had a phone and they say, oh, I lost it, oh, I destroyed it, oh, I damaged it, oh, I don't remember the passcode anymore. Well, all that information is sitting in the car then if they synced it, and it's not encrypted there.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is, nowadays with Apple saying that they're not going to help out anymore, and iPhone 6 is very well locked down, so as well as some of the Android devices. If your suspect had a car, they more than likely, probably 95% chance that they did, connected it to their car, and a lot of the information that is available or that you would seek on the device that's locked and you can't get into is on the car. So it's definitely a whole other source of information.
Yeah, I'm sure you could also look at it from, not just the suspect being in the car, but a victim being in the car. And I say that in the sense that there's a lot of people that keep confidential information on their phone. They connect to it. Now someone can get to their confidential information through the car.
Yep.
So the other thing that is interesting is what it takes for you to get this information out of the car.
Yeah, so that is. Over the last couple of years, we've done everything from bait tagging to using basic debug ports to USB ports in the car to onboard diagnostic ports. We've used every possible means to get stuff out. It just depends. It's much like the mobile phones, right? It depends on the car. It depends on the method. Depends whether you're going to get logical or physical. And sometimes this is difficult stuff. You're going into the car and you're removing the dashboard and you're pulling out modules, and then you're connecting to those modules at the circuit board level. Sometimes you can walk up and plug into the onboard diagnostic port and dump the information out. So it really just varies depending on the cars.
So do you have some methods that are more common than others, like kind of your first go-to method?
Yeah, so we try to do the USB port is what we're always after. That's the most unintrusive. Where we draw the line is we don't want to do anything destructive because these systems cost so much money that if a police department or some civil attorney would have to buy a module back, that would be a lot of money. You're talking $3,000-4,000 in some cases. So everything we do is non-destructive. So sometimes it is the JTAG, but we prefer, if we can get logical access over the USB port or the onboard diagnostic port in the car, that's what we want to go after.
That's pretty cool. I think a lot of people right now who are listening to this are probably thinking, well, yeah, but I have to do something special for my car to download all that information, or I have to hook it up in a certain way.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We use this scenario all the time in our training. If you're on a flight, you fly in, you rent a car, and your phone died, you're going to get in the car and you're going to plug it in, and there's going to be this nice, convenient USB port right there for you. When you plug it into the USB port, it's going to charge your phone, absolutely, and as soon as it powers up, it's going to start sucking all your data down into the car. There's one manufacturer in particular that will ask you, do you want to download your contact list? And of course, being a rental car, you would say no, and it honors that one thing, but it takes everything else that it can get its hands on. It's funny. I mean, they actually said, well, people care about their contact lists, and little do they know that their entire text messaging database is being sucked down onto the car. So it's
I was going to say, but it doesn't have to be USB, right? I mean, Bluetooth does the same thing.
Yeah, so Bluetooth's interesting too because if you can connect it over Bluetooth, which is a lot of states nowadays have this hands-free. Everything has to be hands-free. You can't actually hold the phone up because you might get distracted. And if you connect it over Bluetooth, you get a whole different set of information. Very similar things, but you get more in some cases. So you'll get like the Bluetooth MAC address. You'll get more of the Bluetoothy communications type stuff. More metadata about the phone comes over the Bluetooth when you connect it. Because the car has to then know that, hey, I always want to trust this phone, and I always want to let this phone connect. So it does a lot of things and pulls down information to know what to trust about that phone.
Now, you have a car behind you, not only because you do vehicle forensics, but you're actually in a classroom.
Yep. So a lot of the training we do, we built out a whole classroom for the vehicle forensics piece. And we've got workbenches that line the walls and stuff, but because what we do is a little unique, we made it to where you can pull cars in. Because one of the things we found in the training is people are looking at these $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 cars, and you tell them, hey, you got to go and pull the module out from behind the dash. They're like, no way, I'm not doing that. That seems difficult.
Yes.
And so it's a good experience to pull the car apart and understand that, hey, it's really a bunch of plastic clips, and once you do it once, they're all pretty similar. So we do in the training, it's complete tear down of the cars. How do you access modules and how do you remove things and not break them and then put them back in?
Lee, did you have a question?
Yeah. So Ben, you're talking about pulling out these modules from these cars and everything else. What about aftermarket devices? So if I replace my car stereo and it's got Bluetooth and connects to my phone, can you pull the same kind of data from those too, or is it just the car?
We try to stay with what was originally installed in the car. What you find is some of the manufacturers of the boxes that are in the car, they're also the ones making the devices for the aftermarket piece, like Panasonic, for example. So a lot of their file systems and a lot of their access points are the same. So, on a case-by-case basis, we can support them.
So you mentioned file systems. Let's talk for a second about that. What type of operating systems are running in these embedded systems, and what type of file systems are you seeing?
So again, it just really depends. We support about 3,400 different models of cars at this point. If you remember when we talked about this last year, you and I, we supported 80. So we've come pretty far in a short amount of time. I mean, it's everything from Windows CE to Windows Embedded Automotive to Linux to QNX to their own proprietary roles of each one of those. So, it might be the QNX. You'll see the QNX label on some of these, but it's not the QNX that you'd find in a BlackBerry. It's a specific version for automotives, and that's caused some issues of when you have to reverse engineer this stuff. It's not trivial by any stretch of the imagination.
For those of you watching live right now, this is your chance to ask Ben a question before he flies off to Australia. But Ben has kind of provided his contact information afterwards if you're watching this recorded and you have a question. But I think the most important thing that I think most people want to know, Ben, is how can I learn about this awesome stuff with you, because this is fascinating.
Oh, sure. We do training. We do conferences. I think the next conference we're at is going to be in the UK in April at the Forensic Expo, and we'll be at CEIC in May. So we have speaking slots at all those. We openly talk about what we do. So it's really good stuff. One of the things that I did want to point out was there's a lot of unique information that has to do with just the vehicle itself. So you get a lot of the Bluetooth, you get a lot of contacts, call logs, and things like that. And one of the big things that was a discovery for us was events. So a lot of these systems record events like the passenger door opened or closed, the driver's door opened and closed, lights were on, lights were off. And what's really interesting is they record a timestamp of when that happens, and when you get lucky, they also record a GPS location where that happens. So you can see, the passenger door opened at 2:30 in the morning down by the river, and then the trunk opened, and then the driver's door. So you really can start to build out how many people were in a vehicle, who was in the vehicle. So a lot of the carjackings and a lot of the home invasions, they always take the car. Well, they want their tunes when they steal the car, so they take their phone, and they plug it into the car, and they listen to their tunes. And what they don't realize is they just dumped like their contact list and everything down. So those are actually really fun cases to work, because it's like, oh, good job, I appreciate it.
And it's not going to get smaller in scope. I mean, they're talking about car-to-car communication now, and they're talking about autonomous vehicles. So the future is bright for vehicle forensics.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
It's very, very cool. Now, if someone wanted to learn more, what website should they go to?
Oh, Berla.co, BERLA.co.
And when's the next time you're giving a training class?
The next time is in first part of April. It's here in Maryland.
And if someone wanted to get in contact with you, what's the best way to do it?
Ben@berla.co is my email.
And then on Twitter, you have both a Twitter handle for yourself and the company?
Yep, absolutely. It's just Berla Corp is the Twitter, and then myself is just Ben LeMere.
Very good.
So,
yes.
Can you share with us maybe a couple interesting stories?
Yay.
Yeah.
I can only imagine you have quite a few. I think you were at CEIC last year, correct?
Yep.
Was it you who was talking about how you can get into a car and I think it was 15 seconds to
the
tail
CAN
light
bus
or something?
Do the what?
CAN bus stuff.
Oh yeah, so the CAN bus stuff is really interesting. We end up looking at the CAN bus from the perspective of, you have to be able to explain in court, how does the infotainment system know that the door opened or closed? And it's from the CAN bus. The CAN bus is the network in the car, and there's these messages that fly around the CAN bus, and then each thing, each system knows, hey, I should record this door opening, I should record the lights are on, I should record all these different things, and that's all done from the CAN bus. And you've seen a lot of stuff in the last couple of weeks. There's a 60-minute special. Senator Mackey from Massachusetts put out a report. BMW said they had a huge problem. This has just been the last 2 weeks. And a lot of this comes from the insecurity in the CAN bus of, if you can physically touch the car, you can own that car. You can start it, you can unlock doors, you can do all kinds of different stuff to it through the CAN bus interface.
We have some questions coming in for you. The first is from Vico Marziali. He says, what common rental car models are the easiest to grab data from?
It's going to just depend. Some of the Uconnect systems, anything that uses the USB port for us, that's going to be the easiest. So you just kind of have to look at our supported devices list and see, what's USB, what's onboard diagnostics. It's going to be anything that's just not a complete teardown. That's going to be the easiest thing.
Kyle Maxwell is asking, what's the best way to check our own cars to see what's there? How much initial outlay for the most basic equipment?
How much initial outlay? I don't understand that.
How much would it cost to get some basic equipment to see what your car is?
So, the kit's all one price. It comes with power supplies and everything, and it's $3,200 at the moment. And the way we do pricing is, I mean, last year at this time, I think it was $495. So every time we add a good chunk of manufacturers, we ratchet the price up. And that keeps us motivated, keeps prices down, and it rewards the early adopters.
Very cool. I'll be honest, I thought you were going to give Celebrate prices.
No.
What do they call it now? Celebrate prices. I like Celebrate. I think it's an amazing tool, but man, is it expensive. So,
Yeah.
That's much more affordable than I expected. That's awesome. All right. Well, if there's any more questions for Ben, he's going to be around for just a couple more minutes before he flies off to the land down under. But otherwise, thank you again, Ben, for coming on.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity.
I think it was eye-opening for a lot of people who are watching, especially people who are going to be watching the recording of this.
Yeah, thanks.
So, moving off from vehicle forensics and into what's happening in forensics, switching over to our friend Lee Whitfield. Hello, Lee.
Hello. How's everyone doing today?
So let's go ahead and start with the downer news.
Yes. Hence the pictures behind me here. Things are good. Leonard Nimoy passed away today, aged 83. Mr. Spock has died. So I'm sorry to break that news to everyone. It was a bit of a downer now.
Yes.
I just want to go home. So, yeah, there's that. Which somehow William Shatner still manages to live on, even though all these other Star Trek cast members are dying. Anyway, another important thing is that, is Matthew's jacket actually blue or is it black? I can't tell.
It's actually black.
Okay. I only say that because Jared is going to piss Jared off. All right. Anyway, so one of the big things that happened this week, just over a week ago probably, is that it was found that Lenovo computers were coming pre-installed. Don't do it. I've got a visitor in my office and he's trying to distract me. That Lenovo systems were trying to have been pushing out systems that come pre-installed with something called Superfish. Now, and that's the other picture right here, the really ghetto printed out thing. I don't know how to do overlays on Google Hangouts. So Superfish is interesting. So the whole idea behind all this is that people build these computer systems and sell them basically at cost, sometimes even lower than cost. So you go out and you buy a $299 Lenovo, and you find it comes pre-installed all this, well, lack of a better word, crapware. So you always find like it's got either Norton or McAfee already installed, or it's got who knows what. In Lenovo's instance, we're finding Superfish, and the reason they do this is because they get money from these companies to put this software on, so they actually make a profit from selling these systems at cost. And Superfish generates money in the following way. Let's say you have a website, let's say the Hacking Exposed Computer Forensics website, and what happens is that you establish a connection to that website through your browser. Superfish, what it does is that it looks for empty space in that web page, and instead of just leaving that empty space there or showing the advertisements which may already exist there, it sucks all those away and replaces them with advertisements provided specifically by the Superfish software. So that sounds fine. I mean, it's a bit crap to do that, but that's something which people are prepared to live with. The real issue here is that not only is it doing this over unsecured regular HTTP connections, but it's also doing it over HTTPS connections. So this is interesting. How does it know whenever you're where the empty space is whenever you're connected to a website over HTTPS? Well, it installs its own SSL certificate, root certificate on the system. So, not just the public certificate, but also the private certificate. We'll get to that in a minute. So, that means that whenever you try to establish an SSL connection on your computer that has Superfish installed, Superfish hijacks that SSL session, strips out the certificate of the website to which you're connecting, and replaces it with its own. So, what it means then is that your encrypted connection is encrypted with that Superfish certificate. Now, what does that mean? Well, what it basically means is that anybody who has that certificate or is able to manipulate that and look in your connection can see all of your encrypted traffic without any issue whatsoever, because the software behind Superfish and other software which does similar stuff, called Commodia, they don't generate new public and private certificates for each install. They use the same certificates for every single install on every single system. Not only that, but they also have the same password, which imaginatively the password is Commodia too. So let's say that you have all these Lenovo's out in the real world and people are using it to do their banking and Facebooking or whatever else, and they're keeping all this stuff allegedly private because they see the nice little green lock thing on their web browser. Well, let's say that Mr. Bad Guy gets a hold of this private certificate which happens to be installed on these systems and sets up a website that's like bankofamerica.dx. Yeah. And for SSL, they use the Commodia certificate, private certificate there. Whenever a Lenovo user goes to visit this website, they think they're visiting the actual real Bank of America website because they still have the nice little lock there, and they still think they're on a legitimate website, and they think their connection's secure. But this other people, this other website is basically saying, this is a legitimate website, you can connect to us and send us all your information. They'll just harvest that information. Also, anybody intercepting that traffic will also have, basically a free-for-all on your data. So if you're using a Lenovo system, go and check and make sure you don't have Superfish installed. So yeah, I mean that's the Superfish part of stuff.
Let's talk for a second though about the name. How could anyone really think that a software called Superfish did anything good? I mean, let's just talk about. I mean, what is the one thing that everyone is worried about is phishing, and then you have a product that comes out that gets installed on people's system called Superfish. I mean, did anyone really surprised of what happened? Just in the product name alone.
Well, it sounds like Superfetch, so you don't know.
Do not taint Superfetch, sir.
I'm not going to. Right, so then the next part to this is that, like I said, the Superfish thing is based on some software called Commodia. And when you look at this, Commodia is almost like an SSL hijacking API that's for sale. There's probably some. I mean, there are some legitimate reasons you might use something like this, not this particular instance, but something like this. And that is, if you're working at a large corporation, you want to monitor what people are looking at on your company computers. You want to make sure they're not looking at porn or on gambling websites, or they're watching Netflix all day, or anything like that. Then the best thing you can really do is have something that intercepts that SSL traffic, and you relay it. So, like I said, that's a legitimate reason for that. And part of the issue is that Commodia doesn't just do it for Superfish, but it also does it for other pieces of software too. So a couple which have been found to do this There's some software that I've used in the past, I don't use anymore, called Adware by Lavasoft, which is used to try and get rid of adware on your system and everything else. And another way that's being used is for antivirus. Now, you might think, well, why is that necessary? Well, in terms of the adware and antivirus products, let's say you have some kind of live protection on your system, and that live protection is monitoring any inbound traffic coming onto your computer, so it wants to check and make sure you don't get inadvertently infected with malware. Now, it can do that over HTTP just fine, but when it goes over HTTPS, obviously that connection is encrypted. So, how does it know if you're about to expose yourself to some malware? Well, it does the same thing. It goes through the Commodia SSL hijacking module, and is able then to see your secure connection and see if you are about to become infected.
So what you're saying is it's a feature.
Sorry, go on.
It's a feature, is what you're saying.
Well, it's supposed to be a feature, but it's the same. It's the same thing again. There's a lot of. Let's see, who was it who wrote this one blog post? Let me just go and check.
There's a lot of blogs out about it, and that's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, and this guy called Robert Graham. I don't know who he is, unfortunately. He said that he's actually posted a really nice little blog post about how you can extract the private certificate out of your system and then use it to set up a a bad website or whatever else, and how he got the password to it. So I mean, it's not something which the everyday person is going to be able to do, but these instructions are very, very clear on how to do this. I mean, we're talking about someone with 5th or 6th grade level computer education could probably follow these instructions, extract that one certificate which is used across the board for all of these products, and cause some real damage. I mean,
you're talking about potential for use, and if you're phishing, and Lenovo is one of the world's largest PC manufacturers, and it's all coming with the software on board. Even though I think they try to come out with a statement saying that there's just a limited rollout, there's a small number of people affected. Even a small number of people to Lenovo is a large number of people. If you're a scammer out there and you wanted to go fishing, you're probably going to get a lot of good targets. People going to click on the link and they don't see the normal error pop up that says this is not the right website.
Yeah, and in fairness to Lenovo, when all this became public, first of all, they were a bit skittish, and you can understand that. They're a big company; they want to protect themselves. But they have since come out and said that we made a mistake. We're going to fix this, which is fine. But for those people in the security field, I mean, it's going to take a long time until we trust a Lenovo product again. I would guess. How much is it going to affect their bottom line? I mean, I don't know. Average people aren't going to know about this. They're going to keep buying systems. But the really concerning thing about this is that this crapware is only supposed to go onto like the cheap systems. But unfortunately, Superfish wasn't just found on like the $300 Lenovo systems. It was also found on like the $1,200, $1,500 Yoga systems too. So I mean, it seems as if there's nothing that's particularly safe from this. So if you have a Lenovo, definitely go check it. Make sure that you're not using software which is going to hijack your SSL connection, and even go through your certificates installed on your system and make sure you don't have anything in there from Commodia. If you do, you need to get rid of it.
Nice. Well,
yeah.
Question that came in from Victor Gomez for Ben, who is on his way to Australia now, about whether or not Ben and Berla Corp's research extends to Nissan cars. Victor, I can tell you by going through Berla's website that Nissan is not currently a listed manufacturer of supported vehicles, but if I know Ben, he's working on everything, so I would expect that he is working on supporting Nissan cars. So, anything else, Lee, that is of interest to you this week?
I didn't really see very much else. There's a couple of product updates and things like that, but nothing that's particularly earth-shattering. So
I saw a couple llamas running around. That was pretty earth-shattering.
Yeah.
Nominations are still open for the Forecast Awards?
They are, absolutely. Nominations will remain open until the end of March, and please go and nominate someone or something. There's a lot of... I know that a few weeks ago, whenever I was on, that Harlan made a point that people don't share information enough. Well, I know where he's coming from with that. But those people who do share information, they are really, really deserving of recognition. When we had Ben on the show just a few minutes ago, and the stuff that they're doing with the cars is nothing short of incredible. If you think that he deserves, he and his company to be nominated or deserve an award, then go nominate them, and certainly vote for them when voting opens. If people think that that Dave and Matthew's presentation from last year's Forensic Summit was a particularly great presentation, then go and nominate that. People are very, very much deserving of the credit which we give them, and I think the more credit we give, the more incentive people have to keep doing the things which they're doing and keep sharing good information.
We agree. So, thank you, Lee, for getting us up to date. I like kind of putting this into the show now, kind of changes things up, gets everybody in the loop of new things happening, other than you be aware of. And that leads to someone else that you could nominate this year for an award, and that's Robin. Robin here from CrowdStrike. Hello, Robin. I muted you. Robin. Let me...
I'm here. Hi, guys.
So, Robin, you are a senior researcher or research engineer at CrowdStrike, and when I was teaching Chad in New Orleans, he's like, "Hey, we're putting up a blog about Superfetch," and I said, "That really? I'd like to know more." So I went and read it, and he said, "You were one of the principals behind the research," and I said, "I got to get this guy on the show. Let's talk all about you, the research, and all the rest." Robin, who the heck are you?
Yeah, I'm. Well, my official title is research engineer at CrowdStrike. Although I'm more of a kind of like a general security programmer. I'm technically in the engineering team at CrowdStrike, but I'm more of a dedicated resource to our services team, our incident response team, professional services. So I kind of sit between there. It's a little unusual that the services team has a dedicated engineer for them. But that's how we work there. It's something that they benefit greatly from. So so a little bit of research, more sort of general programming, and working with the services team.
So that's actually a pretty cool concept. I mean, I don't think a lot of organizations out there, and response organizations out there, have people that are dedicated to doing research and tools for them to kind of support their efforts. So that's kind of a pretty neat position. I don't think that I know too many companies that are doing that. I hope more companies do, that people get to be in a position like you are, where they can spend their time just on research and looking into these things.
Yeah, it's like I say, it benefits them because they can get on with their job, and when they need a script or a little tool utility to do something, they say, "Wouldn't it be cool if we could do such and such?" Then I'm there to kind of do the work for them without distracting them from what they do best.
And so, how did you get into this field?
Well, long story. A bit of an old timer. I've been around. I've been programming since high school days, and as a profession soon afterwards. This was a time where the only computer as such at school was a dumb terminal with keys about that long and went ka-chunk, and a paper roll for the display. It was connected with like a 300 baud modem with an acoustic coupler to the city's mainframe. So I've been around for a while. I've always been interested in like games and graphics programming. I moved to the USA from Wales in 1994. I was working for Philips, the consumer electronics company, on a thing called CDI, which nobody's ever heard of, which is kind of a crude multimedia games platform. So this is 1994. It's around the time that the internet was really sort of taking off. So I became interested, as a programmer in computer networking, and as a natural consequence, security. I wasn't really programming any security-related tools as such at that time, but I do remember when I was working at Philips, it was a Sun Unix network, and everything was pretty wide open, so I could, pull the password list down and crack all the passwords and pass that information on to the sysadmin, and I don't think they really acted on it, but that was kind of how I started, and I moved from there into Virgin Games Electronic Arts, which is kind of a tough field, long hard hours, little reward. So games then became increasingly networked, both on the LAN and the internet. So security and integrity of the game itself and the servers became necessary, as did reverse engineering to a degree, because if you wanted to protect something that you didn't write yourself, you had to know how it worked and how to break it. It kind of makes me cringe thinking back to those days where our servers were sitting out on the internet and they were like an NT box with port 139 wide open and easily guessed password. It was pretty scary times. So I developed a number of tools around that time, a traceroute tool, visual traceroute for our users to check their connectivity to our website and so on. Started doing things like scanning our LAN for back orifice and finding it, and just getting more and more into this kind of stuff, fuzzing and stuff like that, before fuzzing even was really very popular, crashing our game servers and stuff like that. I developed a little a port scanner called SuperScan way back, which became pretty popular. Games programming started getting a little too much for me, long hours and everything. So a couple of security companies called me up. They saw some of the tools I put out on the website. EI was one of them, and Foundstone was another. Foundstone looked very interesting and promising, so I went and worked for them in 2000, one of the first employees there. I became pretty well known as like the security tool developer for Foundstone. I wrote, and McAfee, I put out dozens of scanners and custom vulnerability detection applications. And of course, Foundstone was acquired by McAfee and then in turn by Intel. I left them about 2.5 years ago to join CrowdStrike. That was jointly founded by George Kurtz, who I've known all through the Foundstone McAfee Intel days, where he is one of the Foundstone founders. So that's kind of how I arrived where I am right now.
You weren't kidding when you said that you've been around for a while. That's quite a pedigree. So let's talk about the research you have been doing that led to the most recent integration into crowd response. And I guess we should start really with crowd. I think a lot of people know CrowdStrike, and some people have seen some of the CrowdStrike tools, but crowd response is a very specific tool that you guys put out for free.
Yeah, we have a tool internally. It's kind of like a more fully fledged version of crowd response. It's used by our services team. So we had the thought that this is interesting stuff. It's useful for the community. It's not. A lot of it isn't like hardcore forensic stuff. It's just kind of general useful stuff. With Yara and enumerating files and producing hashes and the registry and so on like that. And we thought, well, it'd be kind of cool to put this out in the community, generate some interest, and we'll release, like a new module every month or two with a blog to go with it, kind of support, the latest modules or whatever like that. So the original idea was just to keep it trimmed down, a very simple free version. But as we went along and I developed the internal version more and more, we thought, well, why not just let it all out? Where there might be some little things, very sort of specialized things we may not want to release as part of the crowd response version, but even going back to our Foundstone days, we've always liked to give back to the community. So it's just a nice thing to do. You want me to talk about the Superfetch stuff specifically? I won't go into like tremendous detail, but the reasons why we did it and how we got there.
I mean, I think you can go into as much detail as you want. Our audience likes going down deep, so it's as much as we have time for, to be honest.
Okay.
Let's why you identified perfection, how you first went into the artifact.
Yeah. First of all, full disclosure here. I'm not the original sort of researcher who did the bulk of the work on this. I'm privileged to work here at CrowdStrike with a number of very talented people, and one of those people is Alex Ionescu, pretty world-renowned researcher, reverse engineer, developer, author, so on. He was the person behind the original research. He did the heavy lifting of the original stuff, reverse engineering the huge number of structures associated with superfetch. The superfetch, for people who don't know what it is, it's kind of it's what came after prefetch, basically. It's a more advanced version of that. It's a number of agents which are responsible for various parts of prefetching and prediction capabilities in the core operating system of Windows. They use various databases on disk. It's kind of an optimization sort of thing. So anyway, Alex did a lot of the original research on that. Yeah, the huge number of structures. It proved to be pretty challenging because not only are the structures different on different architectures, 32 to 64-bit, but different things on different versions of the operating system, different compression algorithms and so on, which had to be reversed. And so even then, we had all these structures and the fields in them. Putting those together was like a monumental effort, and it kind of became apparent that the complexity of the whole thing was a little too high for us to do anything meaning with it. So I concentrated on one particular superfetch database called the ag app launch.db file, and this is one of the most useful ones anyway. It records how many times a binary is executed, and there's a timestamp associated with it, and there's periods when it records when this application has been launched. So from 9 a.m. till midday on Mondays, and 4 periods on each day, and the weekends are separate periods. So there's a good amount of really useful and cool forensics information in there, which nobody has really dug down in any meaningful way to before. So, excuse me, there's my phone ring there. But yeah, the timestamps, we encountered some problems. The timestamps, they're relative to something like the system boot time. They didn't really make a lot of sense. They started off reasonably correct, the timestamps, but as time went on and the system was rebooted more times, they became like more and more off. We didn't know what was going on there, so we ended up with a timeline there, which is not terribly useful, but without fully understanding what was going wrong, we kind of came to the conclusion, actually, Alex did and I did, that there's a distinct possibility that Microsoft themselves had made a mistake in the handling of these values, and that's my excuse anyway. So the actual timeline is not tremendously useful, but as I say, regardless, there's still a lot of useful information in there, including, like I say, the logging of the period data. So you could say, certain binary executed perhaps dozens of times during the normal Monday to Friday work week, and then you see it executed once early on a Sunday morning, which would really stand out as suspicious. So we haven't done a full reverse engineering of the whole superfetch thing because it's just massively complicated. But what we do have is pretty useful in itself. We'll probably continue to do some more research in this area, but it takes a lot of work.
It does, and I think what's interesting to a lot of people is that this is something more we've been talking about for a while. Jesse Kornblum did a presentation about this at DC3 back in 2008, but we kind of had one tool that by Red Wolf that did something with it, but not to the the extent that you guys have gone down the road, and more importantly, the Red Wolf tool is no longer available. Apparently, the last time I tried to access it. But superfetch is really something to do as far as an operating system feature. And it's not like it's suddenly in Windows 8.1 or Windows 10, hey, guess what, we have this brand new thing that we're just not looking into. It's been around since Vista.
Yeah, it's it's evolved from the prefetch into superfetch and various versions of superfetch. Um, it's amazing to see what Windows does when you execute a binary. There's just so many things, app compatibility and prefetch and superfetch and logging things all over the place and checking things in the registry. There's so much going on, and Microsoft of course have to keep backward compatibility, and it's just like a huge mess. But it's good for forensics research because there is so much information, even though it's not documented. And that's why we kind of wanted to open this up a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say absolutely, and especially when you consider it's not just on desktops, and I say Vista, but it's also on the servers. And one of the biggest problems we always have is getting more execution information out of servers, especially compromised servers. And a lot of us have been focusing on things like Memcache, which is a fantastic resource that records executables from the system, but it only tells you limited information. And superfetch goes a lot farther.
Yeah, I know that. Also, when people are trying to cover their tracks, they'll often delete the prefetch files, or they'll run some like cleaning app, CCleaner or whatever like that, and it'll wipe things out. And nobody really considers superfetch, so it's great to have that extra little bit of information hanging around there.
Brian Moran asks, superfetch in general behaves as prefetch, aka not usually seen on a server, a system with a SSD. So, Brian, we do know it's on. What about systems with SSD drives?
I couldn't give you a definitive answer on that. I believe it's still used on all Windows platforms, regardless of the drive technology. I think there are some special things it does do with regard to SSD, but I don't have that full information with me. I can certainly ask the other guys here at CrowdStrike, and they could give you a more conclusive answer on that.
Yeah, they do that, or we could just we have machines around here. Sure, Brian does.
Sure.
There's a registry key you can go to. It's on the Forensic Wiki superfetch entry. It'll show you whether or not it's turned on or off. So it's pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, SSDs have negated a lot of the sort of fancy caching and prediction stuff anyway. So a lot of this stuff is kind of moot and may eventually go away one day. Who knows?
Well, it's funny you say that because we're actually seeing the opposite trend. What we saw now in the most recent service pack in Windows 8.1 and what we're expecting to see in Windows 10 is that prefetch is back. In fact, these things are getting turned back on, even on SSD drives. I think there was a development decision made internally at Microsoft that there's still a benefit to having this cache information, even though it's on a faster drive. So I think, based upon the current trend, that we're going to actually see more of this than we were seeing before. Whether or not it'll come back to servers, I don't know. As far as prefetch goes, superfetch, sure, and Rust, but they're only going to grow.
Yeah, that's true. And I've seen things on the web, how to optimize your system, and one of them is like turn superfetch off, and like, well, we don't really understand what it's doing, and it's might be sucking up a few resources on your system, but in general, I think it's best to keep it there.
Yeah, it is, and it's funny because we talk to some of our clients, we're like, what can we do to be ready for an incident? And we give them a list. Turn on prefetch, even on your servers. Make sure superfetch is on. Make sure you leave volume shadows on. All these things that we can use as responders in the future. The more of these things they leave on and they turn on in their gold image pushing out, the more resources that someone like us has walk in the door later to be able to tell them what happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so much that we don't know. This is something we say over and over. There's so much we don't know about what happened. And if there's someone out there who knows it all, they're certainly not telling us. And maybe they're prevented from doing it by contracts and NDA, or other types of military documents. But the community at large has so much more. Only because the people who made the decisions of what to do, what to record, what to say, and how to store it aren't part of our community. Brian Moran, I haven't encountered a ton of SSD in the world yet. My experience is limited, but I haven't seen either prefetch or superfetch turned on the system. I haven't encountered with SSD. So there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
You should test and verify. One of the other questions that I know around SSDs is what makes like turn on or off, because I've heard different people say what's going on. Yeah, I know. So I'll let Robin talk about that. So Robin, if someone wanted to get crowd response, what should they do?
Yeah, you can find it on our website, on the CrowdStrike website, www.crowdstrike.com. I won't give a particular URL because, much like searching for stuff on Microsoft, things move around. Best thing is to just go to the top of the page and go to the Community Tools section, click that, and you'll find it there along with all our other tools. It's actually at crowdstrike.com/community-tools. Right, community-tools right now, but like I say, just go to the root page and you'll find it.
I'll make sure to link. And then if someone would reach out to you?
Yeah, you can email me at robin.keir@crowdstrike.com. I'm on Twitter at robinkeir, that's Keir.
Very cool. And I'll make sure to put links to all the things that Robin has been talking about down below. That way you can easily get at the information. Before you're watching the slide, you still have a couple minutes left to ask questions. It is a snowstorm here in Dallas, and we are planning to get the heck out of Dodge pretty soon. Apparently the roads are getting bad, and we would all like to make it home as two forensic forecasts. And forensic lunches. It's been one of those days. But thank you all very much for watching. Thank you, Robin, for spending this time.
Thank you
very
much.
interesting. I look forward to seeing what other additional research CrowdStrike lets you put out there. I know stuff you guys have to keep in-house. Well, it's valuable, but I appreciate all the feedback.
Okay, thanks.
So with that being said, we're going to get to safety, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot.